Uh-huh. You can test it on that mic. You have to turn the switch on. Bottom, the top, top, top. The switch is on the top. Oh. Assalamu alaikum. Everyone in the Zoom, can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So we have, this is our second session, and then we'll have the third and final one this evening. You'll receive a link, and that is how you'll be able to log into the final session this evening. I know some of you have registered. There's no need to re-register. You're fine. You'll get the link, and you just click the link, and we'll be ready to go. So we look forward to seeing you then as well. Yeah, I saw it. I got it. Also, please just turn your phones on vibrate or silent.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. That is praise be to Allah, Rabbil Alameen, the Lord cherisher of all the systems of knowledge. We worship Him alone and join nothing with Him in that worship. And we witness that Muhammad is His servant and His messenger. He is the one spoken of in the previous scriptures and the seal of the prophets. Upon Him be peace. And the traditional salute. Before I start with where we want to go today, this morning, I wanted to make a correction on something that I said yesterday. And it didn't, I wouldn't say it bothered me, but it was on my mind till late in the night. And I wasn't satisfied until I answered it. But I said yesterday that the word ibadah wasn't in the Quran. That term wasn't in the Quran. And something wouldn't let me rest with that. So I looked and wanted to make certain that what I was saying was correct. And I did find it. The word is in the Quran. So I want to explain most words in the Arabic language begin, the understanding of those words extends from their function as a verb. So the term abd was originally a term in that language to describe the activity of worship. And over time, it came to be corrupted. And there's history and much to know and learn and to be aware of how that term became corrupted. It's associated with the corruption of the first house. So that's important to acknowledge, especially in this discussion that we have today. So from the term, as you know, and we've mentioned before, we had some discussion on it, that the Arabs in the time of Prophet Muhammad used the term abd to describe their slaves. And the term can mean slave. But as I said, there was a corruption in the term. So given by or supported by guidance to Prophet Muhammad, the Quran, and what he understood from his own experiences with his people, and also with the support of the Quran itself, the Prophet corrected the problem. And in the correction of the problem, the institution of worship was described and connected to this term. So to worship is ibadah, which is connected to the term abd. And I said that the term wasn't in the Quran, that it was a derivative. But the term to describe the worship, not just the act of worship or an act of worship, but the system of worship is what I was referring to, the system of worship. And if you know something about Arabic grammar, you can look at the Arabic language and you can see how the term is used in the Quran and if it's referring to an act of worship or a system of worship. What I was referring to was a system of worship, that term is not in the Quran. But you'll have pronunciations of something and it will sound the same, but it's not exactly the same, okay? So one thing is an act of worship or acts of worship, and another thing is a system of worship, which refers to the spirit of worship. What is the focus of it? And how is it, that institution derived? How is it evolved, etc.? So what I was referring to yesterday was the system of worship. But actually, I wasn't satisfied with it. Like I said, it was on my mind. And I had to get the correct, I had to know for certain if what I said was correct. I couldn't rest. So I found it, and I'm going to give it to you now. I won't give you the whole verse from the Quran. It's kind of a long verse, but is translation. I'll just translate it. The verse says in this part, and whoever desires or hopes for a meeting with his Lord, then let him do righteous works. فَيَعْمَلَ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. Let him do righteous works, good works, and join none in the worship due to his Lord alone. And this is where the word is. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَتِي. Now, another place in the Quran, it'll say ibadatahu, which means his worship, referring to an act of worship. This is a system of worship. Yushrik bi ibadati rabbihi ahad. So I want to put that on the record, that's corrected. The term is there, but I did say that many of these terms that we use are derivatives from language in the Quran that the scholars, they look at the language in the Quran, they look at Prophet Muhammad's teaching, and they derive a term to describe something. And we will take the term that they have derived and make it higher or of more importance than what the Quran says. And that's leaning in the direction of error. It's leaning in the direction of error. So I just wanted to correct that. But it's in the context of what we want to present to you today. And we didn't complete what we wanted to do yesterday. I didn't have an opportunity, wasn't able to get to a discussion on the ancient house, Bayt al-Atiq. Ancient house, also called Masjid Al-Haram, the sacred house. Baytul Awwal, the first house, and the context for its importance, full of blessings and guidance. This is what the Quran says about it. So we want to have some discussion on that today. And Masjid Al-Aqsa, the farthest mosque, and Madinah Al-Munawwarah, the city of enlightenment, or Madinah to Nabi, the city of the Prophet. All in the context of progression toward the completion or conclusion in man's social aspirations or social spirit. Allah says in the Quran that He chose Adam. And in that same expression or verse in the Quran, it says that He chose Abraham. And in the focus, the picture that we have of Prophet Muhammad's ascension, where the institution of Salat was established, prayers were established. The Prophet, he was introduced to Adam, and then there's a progression, and a very important progression, a very serious matter, addressing the spiritual integrity, the spiritual structures that are necessary to stabilize human society. We have to be aware of these progressions. And they're very clear as teachings in Islam. There's no mystery. And you don't have to go to any spiritual extreme to appreciate what is here, what is important for us to recognize here. So Allah says that He chose Adam and He chose Abraham. And Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, the prayers and the peace be on him, we're shown, he is reported that he is sharing his experience, and he met Adam. It was introduced to Adam by the angel Jibril on the first level of his ascension. Jibril said to the Prophet, "This is your father Adam. This is your father Adam." And the Prophet greeted him, "Assalamu alaikum, Father Adam." And then the progression to the seventh level. And Jibril introduced the Prophet to Abraham. "This is your father, Abraham." And in between, there are others who are introduced to the Prophet as his brothers. "This is your brother." Into the seventh level, "This is your father." So two fathers, Father Adam, Father Abraham. before Muhammad became or was missioned as the messenger of God, he was already of a kind of high level of a high plane of social sensitivities and a high plane of character already. He was already mature socially. And he belonged to a group among his people who were also sensitive in this way. His friends and some members of his family, they were also sensitive in this way. And it's reasonable to conclude that this sensitivity was associated with their function as the custodians of the sacred house. They understood in their spirit, in their social spirit, as a tradition among the Arabs, that this house had sacred importance. The real meaning of the house was lost because it had been corrupted. And the house, we know, was built by Abraham for the worship of the one God. But that knowledge and association with the tradition or the vision of Abraham had been corrupted. So now the house is full of idols. In spite of that, still the influence on those who had this special sensitivity was strong, the influence of the sanctity of the house. So they were all drawn to the house. Prophet Muhammad in particular, drawn to the house, attention to the house. In this context, it's noteworthy that the cornerstone of the house some kind of way fell out of place. And the elite, now this give you the understanding that these persons treated the house with great reverence. And some of them, they just saw it as the source of good fortune and economy for their economic needs and also economic aspirations, because the house was the center of the Arab religion ritual. And so people came to visit the house on a regular basis, which brought resources and made the people of Mecca wealthy. So for that reason, things had to be intact, you know. So they had that interest. They didn't have the interest that Prophet Muhammad had, or even maybe we might even say some of the other of his early companions, like Abu Bakr. They were sensitive in a different way. They weren't just interested in economic status or strength. Something else was also moving them or moving in them out of respect for the house. So it happened that the cornerstone of the house fell out of place. And we know this to be the black stone. And the chiefs of the Quraysh, who were the custodians, the tribe that was responsible for the care of the house, they were in dispute about who was going to put the stone back in place, all right? And they couldn't agree, you know, because this is important. Again, speaking to some misplaced but noble sensitivity among them to respect this, all right? But they didn't know how to respect it properly. So along comes Muhammad into their, during their discussion about who's going to place the stone back. And they well, they noticed him. They say, well, here's Muhammad. We know him to be a straight man, honest person, honorable, and trustworthy. They already had this feeling about him. And he wasn't one that was disturbing them. They were comfortable with him. And in fact, they treated Muhammad like the central bank in a way. When they would go on their economic ventures and needed to secure their wealth, they left it with him, knowing that not only when they return would they have what they left him, but also it may have some improvement. In other words, it may have increased. They knew that about him. So their recognition of him was for the excellence in his humanity and his special, honorable character was very well established. And this was also known and was the cause for his wife to propose to him because of his character, because she knew him as a person in her employment, and he took care of business and also did things unexpected in terms of improving and bringing more benefits to his community and to his wife, even before she married him, before they were married. Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her. So he comes into their situation and their discussion and argument, their dispute about who's going to put the black stone back in its place. So they say, here he is. And they ask him, ask him to help them make a decision. So the prophet, before he's missing the messenger of God, I'm saying the prophet because this is how we know him, but he's Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the son of Abdullah. That's how he's known, and known for his goodness and his excellent character. And so they ask him, and he gives them a suggestion. And he says, here, take this cloth, and all of you have a share in holding the cloth and holding the stone. And we'll take it to put it in its place, and I will place it in its place. They were satisfied with that. They all participated, and they permitted him to take the stone and put it in its place. Now, the preservation of these stories are very important. How many generations of people this story has been passed down to, and we're rehearsing it and we're remembering it now. We're talking about it now. We weren't there to witness it. We can only witness it in our intent to make the point. That's how we witness it. And the point is what? That the meaning of the house, the core essential appreciation for its value in the life of human society had been completely lost. But all mankind has a share in this, that it be corrected, that the importance of it be put in its proper place so as to benefit and to fulfill its purpose. And it takes a special sensitivity to put it back to its purpose or put it in the place where it belongs. Does that sensitivity mean that a person has to be evolved in terms of their religious understanding, or because of their ritual devotion to God? That didn't come into the discussion at all. Prophet Muhammad, he wasn't asked to help resolve this dispute because he had some high knowledge of God. In fact, their idea was that that there were many gods, right? That had nothing to do with it at all. What did it have to do with? It had to do with his character, his humanity, his nature. So the first sensitivity in the life of human beings to restore what God wants is to respect the nature. That's the first and most important matter. And it is upon that recognition that Muhammad ascended. If that wasn't present, then there would be nothing that we consider to be the Islamic order of society. It's all built upon this sensitivity. And it must be understood that Muhammad did not belong to any religious order. So it wasn't a religious spirit that brought him to this sensitivity. It was just respect for his own nature. And also, within that respect was the awareness that his people were outside of, or a distance away from, what was necessary or what was important to preserve. It was he that had that sense. And they accepted that in him. But he was aware of it in himself. He was aware of it in himself. He knew that the order of society in which he lived was out of order, and that he had something to put it back in order. The fact that he couldn't stomach or tolerate the condition of his society, that he had to separate himself from it on a regular basis, is also a sign. Now, we're not talking about a man who is necessarily inclined to separate himself socially. Prophet Muhammad, before he was missioned, was a merchant, a businessman. He's regularly interacting with people. And he's a good businessman. He's not the average, just barely making it. You know, he has access to some wealth, and he understands wealth. He understands the importance of wealth. We could say of him in his time, before he was the messenger of God, that he was of the main business people in Mecca, primary business people. And all of them were merchants in some way or another. Abu Bakr was also his friend, close companion, who was also a successful businessman. His family, they were all related, even in kind of a distant cousin-like way, but they all related. So they were cousins, distant. So he's related to Abu Bakr. He's related to Omar. Omar is another one who was business person, wealthy. But what distinguished Muhammad from the rest of them was a keen awareness of the importance of the sanctity of the house. What disturbed him most, aside from the obvious transgressions of his people toward the poor, that bothered him a great deal. The mistreatment of persons that didn't have the same material resources, how they were mistreated. That disturbed him greatly. And that was a sign to him that something was out of order in his people. How could they be claiming the nobility of the custodian of this house and be so concerned about the care of the pilgrims visiting the house, but at the same time, in their own circumstances, restrict or deny certain groups of people the resources to have a dignified life. This disturbed him. And it was these kinds of social concerns that drove him to separate himself from them, where he sought solitude to reflect on the condition of the society in which he lived. Now, we know too that he was a person, not just his economic or his business activity was not just local to Mecca. We know that he traveled and that he came into contact with many people, different people from other places in his travel, in his work for the business. And he met people and talked to them. So he's concerned, he has more than just the concern of a local leader or locally based. His social spirit was bigger than just Mecca. He was seeing things in the world in which he lived, listening to the discussions, and perhaps participating based on his experiences. So, just like I once was on the airplane with Imam W. Deen Mohammed. We were coming from someplace, I don't remember where, and we got into the airspace of Chicago. And I guess we both was feeling the same thing at the same time, took like a deep breath. And the Imam, I'll never forget this, he was sitting, normally he would sit in the aisle seat, but he was sitting by the window. I was sitting next to him, there's 2 seats there. And we knew we were coming into Chicago Midway Airport. And I kind of sighed because I knew what I was going to be facing. and I don't know what was exactly on his mind, but whatever hit him at the same time it hit me. But we just recognizing each other, And I, of course, a much younger man then. And he looked at me and he said, shook his head, he took his head like this. He said, the oppressive air of Chicago. So I can imagine that Muhammad, after returning from his mission or his work and business for his wife and for her business, coming back to Mecca, had a similar sense. He is back at this troubled situation, troubled environment. So, what drove him to the cave, away from his people, was a sense of what human life is supposed to be. A commitment to what human life is supposed to be. And he was not satisfied that anything that he had been given, taught, in the tradition of his people, in their tradition of knowledge, and even in their tradition of spirituality, that it could be trusted. Only thing that he felt comfortable trusting was his own nature and spirit to find truth and answers. Now, any person who is in touch with the sensitivity of their own soul has experienced this or should have experienced this. This is the path to enlightenment. This is the path to ascension. And it's the path to ascension for every people, not just individuals, for whole peoples. You can see this movement in the spirit of the people. You can see it in their cultural expressions. You can see it in their entertainment. You can see it in their clothing. You can see it in their architecture, moving in a direction away from selfishness to universality. So Prophet Muhammad represents all of us, that is the human life, the human family in this movement. This is before even having any sense or acquaintance with a God. This is just in the social interest, in the social spirit. Now, we know that Allah created us. We know that God created us and he created us with this urge. We know this now, but we're witnessing, we're looking at Muhammad and his experience, all right? And my expression to you today, the way I'm expressing myself, is in a context. It's in a social context. It's in the social context of a people, all right? This activity is not apart from or separated from the activity of the soul of the African American people. So what I'm expressing to you now is the sensitivity for Prophet Muhammad's experience from the innocence of the soul of the African American people. And I'm giving you language for that expression that comes from one who was formed in a group specially sensitized to correct the problem that existed for the African American people, that is Deen Mohammed. I'm talking to you in his language. I didn't have any speech before his language. And he didn't have any speech before he was formed in the womb of the Temple of Islam. And his father had no speech except that he was taught by his teacher with a plan. A plan. So we're connecting, and it's important that you understand what we're connecting to. We're connecting to the social spirit that exists in the innocence of Prophet Muhammad's soul before he even became acquainted with anything called Islam. Same movement in Abraham. Same movement in Abraham. Same hope in Abraham. And this is what Allah says that we're to be called. This is what we're called to, the hope of Abraham. And this description of Abraham, that Abraham, peace be on him, Allah says of him, who is better in religion? This is the language. Who is better in religion than one who has focused himself for dignity, focused their attention on the special importance of human dignity, the question of human dignity. How do we know it's talking about human dignity? Wajha is the word that's used in the Quran. Face, literally means face, dignity. How do you assess your dignity? In your face. Little babies. I know a little baby. She's a beautiful little baby. I know her. I know this little baby. And this little baby can make faces. This little baby doesn't have language yet. No sophisticated, no language of sophistication yet. No, maybe a vocabulary of maybe 30 words, maybe, possibly. And can speak in short phrases, 2 or 3 words. But certainly has a evolved ability to express displeasure or pleasure in the physical act and in the face. You can look at her and see, she'll tell you, I'm not pleased with you. I'm not pleased with these circumstances. I'm not pleased with how I'm being restricted today. But she can also express great pleasure in her face. Sophisticated sense of pleasure. Something pleases her, and she'll laugh and show her teeth. This is Prophet Muhammad. He would laugh. When he would laugh, he wouldn't get overcome in laughter. It wasn't any extreme thing, but when he did laugh, he laughed deeply. It said when he laughed, you could see his teeth, the back part of his molars, and he enjoyed humor, and he had humor. He saw his son-in-law in the masjid laying on the ground, and he came upon him during the day and looked at him and asked him, "What's your problem? What's going on with you, man of the dust?" He knew what the problem was. His daughter, Fatima, had kicked Ali out of the house, something he did. And Ali was lamenting and laying in the dust in the masjid on the ground. Prophet Muhammad kicked the dust on him, said, "What's your problem, man of the dust?" Humor, humanity, okay, is what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that Abraham's special sensitivity was human dignity. And Allah is saying, who is better than him? The one whose special attention is on the dignity of humanity, the dignity of the human community. And in that context, in that spirit, he is a doer of good. This is the attribute that's given to Abraham, muhsin, a doer of good. Now it progresses because Abraham had a similar kind of experience. Abraham saw that the rulers of his society had come to a secret agreement on how to manipulate the people for their purposes. And they did it by way of the use of idol gods. It wasn't anything but secret society, secret knowledge, secret society, secret scheme to oppress. And how do we know that it was a secret scheme? Because when he destroyed the gods, he destroyed them, but left the big one. And the schemers came and said, who destroyed these gods? Who destroyed our gods? And the response came back to them, ask the big one. This is Abraham speaking back to them. As a young person, okay? Says he was a youth. And they said to him, you know these gods don't speak. Tell you what, they knew what they had done. They knew what they were doing. Abraham revealed their scheme. He let it be known that he knew what they were doing and he knew how to defeat it. He came to this sensitivity. He came to this from what? From experiences with the natural world. And he observed and wanted to find what should be my proposition to establish my worth. How should I, what is the process for me to accommodate that discussion in myself? This was Abraham's question. What is my worth? How am I to determine my worth? What sets the foundation for my value? This is Abraham's question. How am I valued? What is my purpose? This is his question. What is my purpose? And he finds that he must set himself to that which is bigger than him to set his own value. Because he knows that he is not coming into existence on his own. Something is bringing him into existence. So he's looking for that which has brought him into existence to find his purpose, so he can address his society. This is in his sensitivity. This is him acting as an individual. This is also a whole people. See, Prophet Muhammad, he's acting on whom? On whose behalf? On behalf of the Arabs in his society in Mecca, but he's also acting on behalf of humanity. This is a movement in the human soul. It takes place in every community of man. It must take place. If it does not take place, you are a perpetual slave. This movement toward freedom begins with an attention to the social excellence and potential of the individual human being. You can't tell me that this wasn't happening in the soul of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in Elijah Poole's soul. He was searching too. So we're talking about the value of the ancient house. So the ancient house, Bayt al-Atiq, refers to what? The house that was existing even before Abraham. It had to have existed before him. He just brought it into physical reality. He brought it into physical reality with his son, Ismail. Says in the Quran that they raised the foundations for the house, right? But the sensitivity to bring the house into existence, Bayt al-Atiq, ancient, even before him, even before Abraham. This began with Adam. And it's given in Islamic tradition that Adam was responsible for the first house. And that the first house was looking more like a coffin than the cube that we see now. That has importance because where do we review the value of a life more than we review it at death? That's where we think on the whole life of the person, right? We think on the whole life, the origin, the middle, all that's in between, all the way to the conclusion. We're thinking about the whole value of the life. When we're looking at the baby born, we're looking at hope. possibilities. But when we're looking at the body at death, we're looking at a completion. So we're looking at the whole life of a human being and how that human life is valued. So let's go back to what I was talking about yesterday when the character in the movie told Kevin Costner's character, "You on the path of the true human." This is a discussion on the value and the importance of what Allah created when He created Adam. So when we're talking about the ancient house, Beit al-Atiq, we're talking about the creation of Adam and his human sensitivities and in his focus and determination to reach for something that all the prophets shared in. And they all had this hope and this concern to bring this into completion, to bring this to its establishment. How does a human person guarantee their own value, realize their own potential, and protect that interest for other humans? This is the core sensitivity of the most special and important leaders in the history of mankind. Our leaders that don't focus this in the proper way cheat us. This is the discussion of Islam. This is what Islam is wanting to know, wanting to explain, and wanting to assist you as clothing to protect you and bring you to that state of Munawwarah. And this is what Prophet Muhammad saw. This is what he saw. So he began this association with the house, began with him with a special sense of respect for the house. And now his people give him recognition for guaranteeing that respect. But what is the respect for, essentially? It's not respect for the house. It's respect for human life. It's respect for human nature. That human nature is the beginning for the social establishment that God wants in community. It is respect and love for human nature. And then once you have respect and love and the proper perspective on the value of human nature as a starting point, then you meet your Lord who created that nature. And this was the movement in Abraham's spirit, in his intellect. It's a movement in his spirit, but it's a movement in his mind. Because Abraham is not satisfied just to be moved spiritually, because schemes have been manifest to usurp something from human life. How is that thing that has been usurped restored? He wants systems. This is Abraham. You understand what I'm saying? He wants systems. What is the system? I need to be connected to the system. And if I'm connected to the system, then I can see the one who is responsible for the system. And I know that the one who is responsible for the system will guarantee justice. This was in Christ too. This is his spirit. Christ's spirit, same. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. As it is in heaven, the heavenly bodies respecting one another, respecting each other's space, moving in their own orbits. That peace and order, it must also exist in community on this earth. But he couldn't guarantee it. They're all reaching for the one who completes the idea. So Prophet Muhammad goes through these processes too, and he meets each one of them. They all reaching. Adam is reaching. Adam in his reach, he lost the connection. And his story is the lesson for all communities of humans of how a misperception of the value of your nature can trip you up and manifest in your existence enemies to that nature. All this come out of the human life. All this come out of the human intellect. All this is activity in the human mind and human spirit. And God intends for it to happen, that we be tested. And Allah says this in the Quran, that He tests you to see who of you is best in character. So here's this movement in the human soul. It's a movement in the human soul. And you can't separate this from the activity of Elijah Poole. You cannot. Why am I going to skip over the story of Elijah Poole and the Nation of Islam and go take from the Maliki school or the Hanafi school and the movement of Imam Malik and Imam Hanif and Imam Hanbali and Imam Shafi? How am I going to go to them, skip over my situation and go to them and just forget about my situation? It wasn't my study of their situation that brought me to attend myself to my condition. They weren't in the oppressive system of America, associated with slavery. That wasn't their story. I'm not saying that there's not anything of value to be studied. There is. That's just the universal spirit to free yourself. Look wherever you need to look for help. But I'm not going to neglect my own story or make somebody else's story more important than mine. I got a story too. And who's to say that my story is not the story for mankind? The Jews don't have any problem saying that their story is the whole story. They don't have any problem at all telling the world for generations, our story is the whole story of guidance. Right? When I look at our story, it looked more closely like the story of mankind in the struggle for life that God intended than any other story that I'm aware of. It's real. It's verifiable in history. We can show you the documents. We can show you the slave codes. We can show you the denial. We can show you the speeches on the floor of the legislatures. There's no fantasy. We ain't got to go to the ancient world and dig up something that was under the ground for 3,000 years and then claim that it says this. We can go right now and show you. It's a holiday. It's a thing going on right now in this city where we are that commemorates the releasing of the slaves from their commitment from what they were forced to do in Washington, D.C. That's happening right now. I ain't got to skip over that. Elijah Poole was a victim of this society, and he representing a spirit in our people to have expression and to have dignity and to stand up in the same way that all other people stood up. I don't see anything wrong with us commemorating that. We should commemorate it. We should celebrate it. We should remember it. We should embrace it. It belongs to us. And that's what I mean by when I have said the guided tradition. That is what I meant. It's just a way of saying that what has formed us as a people belongs in the tradition of guidance that all peoples embrace, that all peoples think of when they think of the pathways to their freedom. And all people have experienced this. Yes, all peoples have myth and all kinds of explanations for their tradition toward social excellence and social establishment. And some has more fantasy than truth, more myth than reality. We have our myth. Mr. Farad introduced myth language, but he also put in his myth story, myth language, an unraveling of the myth. he provided for an opportunity to correct the problem. Tantamount to the story of Jesus Christ putting mud on the man's eyes to free him from blindness. Mr. Farad saw himself acting in the role of Jesus Christ. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. He came from a people that was sensitized to the story of Jesus and his family and how to bring truth into the world. So he used that strategy, all right? And he saw himself acting in that strategy, putting mud on the eyes, being a thief in the night. Yeah. A thief in the night. That's how Jesus Christ described himself. All right. So we're discussing the importance of the ancient house. Now we want to go to Al-Aqsa, Masjid Al-Aqsa. The Quran says, speaking of the mother of Jesus, peace be on him and his mother, that she carried him, hamaltuhu. She carried him. I mean, he was forming in her. She conceived him. And she withdrew. Makanan qasiyyan, to a far place. She carried him and she withdrew to a far place. All right. Here's the process to bring into the world a different spirit for correcting the trouble that man has introduced into his own life by oppressing himself, separating himself from truth and guidance. This comes as a consequence of being separated from truth and guidance, being separated from the principles of liberation, freedom, and the principles of human establishment in society, being separated from those things, being oppressed from those things. That's what it means to withdraw. Spiritual language is speaking to more than just the matter at hand. The matter is discussing. It's speaking about universal concepts, and that's how we have to appreciate these things. All of this is in the context of human social establishments. So if the story is saying that Mary, the mother of Jesus, withdrew, it's no different from it saying that a sensitive soul has withdrawn. Muhammad withdrew. Abraham withdrew. Joseph was forced to withdraw. To come to the proper understanding of what should be the systems that support educational development, you must withdraw from the society in which you live to assess it. So she withdrew to a far place. So here's Prophet Muhammad. He's now come into an awareness of the special nature of human life, a sensitivity, and he withdraws. That withdrawal is also an elevation. So he now has ascended, and he has a vision, according to the Quran says, and we showed him in a night vision or journey, the farthest place of worship. The farthest place of worship. What is the farthest place of worship? Masjid Al-Aqsa. What is the farthest? It's talking about a mosque? The Quran says we took him from the first place, the sacred house, to the farthest mosque, a distant place, far in the distance. And here it said Mary withdrew to a far place. What is at the far place? The farthest focus for your vision is where the sky and the earth meet. That's the farthest place. That's the farthest. I put on these glasses, I see that wall back there. But if I go out and beyond that wall and there's no buildings and I'm just looking, just think now, I'm just looking and imagine there's nothing in the way of my vision. I can see clearly what is the farthest place I can see with my physical eye. It's the horizon, right? The horizon. The place where in my estimation or in my vision, I see the sky and the earth meet. That's the farthest place. So Masjid Al-Aqsa, in the sensitivity of Prophet Muhammad, having been elevated upon the excellence of his human nature, is what? The conclusion that is governed by spirituality and also the material existence. That's the conclusion. That's the question that must be answered. And when I get that answer, when I find what the answer to that is, I bring that into establishment to serve the life of man for man's social progress. So he's given a vision, and God takes him to that place. And there, in that process, he goes through the progressions. Adam, Jesus Christ, John, Idris, Joseph, Aaron, Moses, Abraham. Just think on, we don't have the time to go into all of it. And I'm going to, we're not finished this part now. We're going to finish or conclude the discussion this afternoon. So I'm not wanting to give all the details now. But think about, appreciate the exchange. Not that we're to understand that there was a conversation necessarily, but there is an acquaintance and an introduction and a cathartic experience for Prophet Muhammad. There is, I don't know if you know what I mean by catharsis, but an experience of purification, shedding of inferior notions of what this existence is supposed to be and what is necessary as supports to bring me where I need to go. So he's experiencing this. And in this ascension, also understand that at the conclusion of this, the prayers are established. So the institutional prayer of Muslims is established in this process. And each of the figures in this ascension are reaching for Muhammad. Whatever it is that he will achieve, they understand in their own sensitivity that their hopes are realized in him. So whatever it is that he experiences with them is of service to bring that into existence. So he carries with him all of this. This is Mary carrying him. says, carrying him, conceived him, carrying him. You think Mr. Farad didn't read this language in the Quran? I can't do, in his mind, he was an outcast in a way. He was an outcast of his own group. He belonged to a certain group and he was outcast from them. Maybe because his notion of what to do was more radical. What he was prepared to do was more radical than they could stomach. So he was a kind of they respected him now. And I believe from what Imam W. Muhammad tells us that they loved him, but they held him at kind of a distance from them because he was a bit radical in his notion of what he wanted to achieve. Maybe they thought it wasn't realistic. When Mary came to her people and they looked at her state, they said, "What is this? What's going on here?" What explains this situation? No. So you can see the parallels here, right? You can see the work that is being done. All right. Let's see how we're going on time. Okay, so I tell you what we'll do. We will. I want to go further, but I know it's going to take us to something, and I prefer to wait until this afternoon to go to that. So we'll stop here, and if you have some questions or some discussion that you would like to have for maybe an hour or so, or however long, it's now. 8:30, right? Okay, so I was thinking that we conclude at this time at 9 o'clock or 9:30. So if you all have some questions or some discussion, let's have that now. And we will continue our discussion this afternoon. Masjid Al-Aqsa and Madinah Al-Munawwarah. That's where we'll start up again.
So for anyone in the Zoom, please, if you're not on camera, please get on camera. We want to have an interactive experience. If you have a question, go down to the reactions screen and raise your hand. Again, please get on camera. I know that some of us might be working, so we do understand that, but if you're able to, please turn on your camera so that the imam can see your face as you ask your question. You don't need to. Okay, that's fine.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Oh, hold up. Somebody raise their hand first. Brother Ishmael Fahmi, go ahead and open your microphone, sir. You have a question? Okay, just go ahead.
You mentioned recently, not in this session, but in one of your classes, you mentioned the story of, and it was, I think, kind of in passing, the story of Jacob and Esau. And you said that it was a sign that you were thankful to Allah for. And I thought about it, and it wasn't clicking for me. So would you please elaborate on that?
Jacob and Esau.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. You know, um, I have gotten, I want to say this in a way that you can appreciate how it makes me feel. And at the same time, I want to be fair to those that have problems with me personally. I want to be fair to them. I want to, I actually, the ones who have problems with me, I think I respect them more than they respect me, because I try to understand them. When I was the imam in Baltimore, I never accepted to not have, if possible, 100% compliance and support from people. I wasn't satisfied to have majority. I wanted 100%. And if it wasn't 100, if one person was a dissenter and they had a reason, then we would dissent until we got to a place of agreement. The brothers who were there with me, some of them here, they're here now. They could tell you that that was the way I conducted the affairs when I was the imam. So if someone dislikes something about what I'm doing, I want to know about it, and I want to know why. And if it's just, I want to address it. If it's not just, then I'll put it in the proper category, the category of trash or bullshit. But if it doesn't deserve to be there, I'm not going to put it there. You know, if somebody has a real concern, I want to hear what their concern is. So what I'm going to say to you that prefaces my answer, I want you to understand. But I get, I would say, more respect from individuals in the Nation of Islam leadership than I do from our own leaders. And they send me messages of I won't say support, not necessarily support, but they want me to know that they appreciate what I'm doing and they want to see me be successful. Well wishes, I guess you could say, which ranks in the area of decent human, you know, because I tell you, I want the imams in our association to be successful. I pray for them. I pray for their success. I believe they pray for my failure. They don't want me to be successful because they believe that if I'm successful, it's going to take from them. It's unfortunate, but this is the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob, this is the Bible story, okay? So this is not Quran. This is not the Islamic presentation. This is the Bible. But it describes scheming and movement on the side of people to steal the birthright or to steal credibility. Credibility didn't belong to Jacob. It belonged to Esau. But Jacob had a scheme to take it. And aspects of the culture supported it. Okay? So the whole, this is the place to say it, but the whole body of leaders, with the exception of a very few, but there are exceptions, and I want to acknowledge that. There are exceptions to this. But the whole body of leaders associated with Imam W. Deen Mohammed's following are illegitimate, with the exception of a few. What makes them illegitimate is that they are hypocritical to what they say they're committed to. And their interest is to serve their own ego. They're egomaniacs. And they schemed against him, and he exposed them, not by name or as individuals, but as a group. He exposed them. We need to come to a conclusion about that, and we need to appreciate that he exposed them. He separated himself from them. He described them in detail, their behavior. He said that, among many things, I'm just pointing out one thing he said. He said that they pretend to support so as to keep themselves in good standing. But when he dies, what will manifest is what their real interest had been, all right? And we have seen that. So in the story of Jacob and Esau, you have one who is designated in line for special responsibility. But he's not favored by the cultural disposition of the group. And in the story, it's the mother. And so the mother gives an unfair advantage to the one she favors. And he gets the attention. He's not deserving of it, but he gets it. And he's a willing participant in this act of deception. So that's the story. And if you don't have to go, you don't have to reach to see what's going on with us, all right? But this is also not to be separated from what happened with Minister Farrakhan and Imam W. Deen Mohammed. It's similar. Imam Muhammad, he told me, he said, we visited Minister Farrakhan. And after we visited with him, I'm just sharing these things. You all should know these things. I'm sharing these personal stories and experiences. And they don't belong in the trash bin of history. They belong in our circulation and discussion. And it's not to disparage anyone. It's to speak truth, okay? We visited with Minister Farrakhan, and after the visit, we were going to the hotel room where the imam was staying. He told the security brothers, I won't forget this, because it was very clear. He told them, you stay back. He said, Abdulmalik will walk with me to my door. He said he'll make sure everything is okay. So I'm not a security person, you know. So you got the security brothers who are really not understanding exactly what's going on, but they're not going to tell the imam anything different, you know. So we walked down the hall. I won't say what city we were in. But the security wasn't just that city, okay? It was national security people. So we walking down the hall and walking to his room. And he says to me, I'm gonna have a dream. He's Abdulmalik. He said, I'm gonna have a dream tonight. I know. He said, and in the dream, I'm gonna see my father. And he said, my father gonna say, Wallace, why you let that man act like he's me? So here's the conclusion to the story of Jacob and Esau. It says that Esau became a nation. In other words, Esau became a people, and that they were a viable and respected people, even though they didn't have the same notoriety or attention that the people of Jacob had. So in spite of what took place, in spite of the injustice of it, in spite of the trouble, still God established Esau and his people. So that's the conclusion. So no matter what scheme there is about to defeat us, to defeat me, which would be ridiculous, you know, why are you focusing me? You know, I'm a representative of the life. But, you know, our people, they're so disingenuous, you know, some of them. They pretend like that they don't have troubles, you know, that they're a people without sin, that they're sinless. That's how they behave. Self-righteous, false piety, you know, and they're so holy and righteous, and look at what he did. Look at how he went to prison, and more than 75% of them have people in their own families that went to prison and deserve to go. Just ridiculous if you're really looking at the truth of the matter, you know. So that's nothing but a bunch of falsehood, right? Trying to usurp what is a special blessing for the whole group, for themselves. Just sickening self-righteousness. You know, pretense. I saw one day he looked like us, just like we do. Then the next day he had on the cap of the Egyptian. I saw him. He was given the khutbah, and he had on his head what the scholars of Egypt that follow I think they follow the Shafi school. And so they wear certain head covering. The same in Egypt and in Palestine. The Palestinian leaders too, they wear the same. I saw this man, supposed to be with us, with this cap on, leading the Jummah. I don't know, what are you doing? What are you saying? Then the next day I see him, he's associated with this political organization, political advocacy organization, civil rights organization among Muslims, CARE. He's associated with them. Not to say that they don't do good work. I believe they do good work. And may Allah favor them, bless them, and give them success in all the works that they do that are good. But this person is confused and introducing confusion into our life, but has commentary on me. I haven't seen him yet. He said that he was going, I don't even know what this language means. You know, I had to ask one of my children, what does it mean we're going to put him on blast? What does that mean? I had to ask one of my daughters. I said, what does that mean? My daughter said, Daddy, it's not relevant. It's not. I said, wait. So where am I on blast yet?
He hadn't come to see you.
That's what I read. They're going to put him on blast. So I said, Samia, what is blast? What is this? I said, Daddy, it's not anything important. I said, God Almighty, these people are Jacob. All right. And they put on false, their sensitivities are pretentious. That's what the false hair is, you know. Hairy. So what they purport to be, they're not really that. It's all exaggerated. And so they don't realize that the real sensitive people, the people who are truly sensitive, spiritually sensitive and socially sensitive, can see that they're pretentious. We can see it, you know. The only reason we don't call it out is because we're trying to help them save themselves. So we don't want to hurt their feelings, you know. We're trying to help them. But when it gets to a point of sick, you know, it gets sickening to us, you know. So we want to separate from them. But anyway, that's the story, and it is the reference is helpful as a sign that in spite of whatever schemes exist to cause or to trouble us or defeat us, it's not going to be successful. It's not going to be successful. We have, this is 2023. So in 2 years, we have 2025, which is 50 years of the leadership and influence of Imam W. Deen Mohammed. This is something that we should acknowledge and celebrate openly in the context of our plans to celebrate 100 years in the history of our community. I don't know that any of these people are even sensitive to this. I don't know that they're even thinking about it. But I guarantee you that the people in our community who were born in 1975, they thinking about it. They know its importance, you know? It's central. So I don't, it's not necessary for anybody to tell me or speak to me about whether or not what we're doing is legitimate. Esau knew he was legitimate in spite of the scheme. So we want to acknowledge and celebrate 50 years of Imam W. Muhammad's leadership. And we're going to do it in a way that even they can identify in and benefit from, in spite of themselves. So I hope that that's helpful to you. Well, if you want to follow up, you want to ask something further?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think what disturbs me is that Jacob was still established and went on for, from my understanding, for generations. And when I was looking into the story, it was suggesting that, because I was looking, well, did Esau get the birthright back? But from what I was reading, it seemed like Jacob kept it and he kept going. And it seemed like Esau was established, but as like a minor group on the side. And so I'm that in the context that you brought it up, that kind of, I was unsettled by that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What you must also consider is that Allah says in the Quran that most of the people do not have faith. Most of the people do not have knowledge. This is the Quran. Most of the people are ignorant. So the majority, and also the Quran says, and if you submit to the majority spirit, that they will lead you into error. And Allah says in the Quran, how many times has He shown the strength of a small minority and given them victory? So the model community, the model group is always going to be smaller. And there'll be times when they seem insignificant, but the sensitive soul will find them. It will reach into history and find them. Say, here's that group. Here it is, you know. I identify, for example, and I hope maybe they will get this message somehow. They'll get this message. Their leaders will get this message, and we'll be able to visit them. The people of Myanmar, Burma, Rohingya Muslims. I hope they get this. I identify with them. They are an oppressed people. They are a small minority, but I see something in their social spirit that's akin to our spirit. And I think that they can help us and we can help them. But it's a similar story. Cheated out of their dignity as a people. Even with Imam W. Deen Mohammed's work that has impacted the discussion on the importance of Islam in American society, even in spite of that or in view of that, still the immigrant Muslims treat us as like a stepchild or something, you know. On the whole, there's exceptions, but on the whole, they want to make us feel we're still not quite legitimate. And they have code language to use that they use to describe this illegitimacy. They have code language, all right? They make it appear, and this is intentional, they make it appear that they are responsible for all Islamic growth and institutions in the United States. And that this was their plan all along. That's how they make it look, like we have no role in it. Or if we do have a role, it's under their authority. That's not truthful. Nevertheless, we endure, and we're going to succeed. And we will not accept that our expression be only under their umbrella. This is also a similar discussion in that story, okay? So believe that we will have our establishment and it will be a model establishment. Great.
Okay, again, we'll go to Zoom. I see a couple people have their hands up. We'll start again with you, Brother Ishmael Fakhmi. Go ahead, unmute your microphone, ask your question. Hold on one second. Can you hear us? All right, give us 1 second here. We're having a little issue with being able to hear you. Does anyone else here have a question?
Wa alaikum assalam. Newlywed.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And new father too, huh?
I am.
Yes, wonderful.
I'm nervous, but I'm happy. So,
I understand. I understand both.
Thank you. So during Ramadan, I witnessed two brothers make shahada in the masjid. During the same week, I witnessed a sister. She did shahada. But the imam, he said something to the sister they did not say to the brothers.
Speak it to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said something to the sisters that he didn't say to the brothers that make shahada. He told the sister, make it five pillars, do your prayers, zakat, hajj if you can, and take shahada. So I wanted to know, because you were talking about Prophet Muhammad's character, I wanted to know where we get lost to where we introduce new Muslims into the religion, that we automatically go to the 5 pillars, that we don't talk about character, don't talk about sensitivity to the human nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I tell you, there's a part of a verse in the Quran that says that above the learned is the one who is most learned or most knowledgeable. I put it like that. Above the knowledgeable is the one who is most knowledgeable or has all knowledge. This is a reminder to the learned people that they're not the highest in understanding, and that Allah, according to the need, will direct and guide and inspire people to focus what is proper, okay? Even above the imams or the so-called ulama, the learned people. We know from the history of the time of the Prophet and those that were in leadership after him that members, just regular members of the community would correct the leaders. And we have in our ritual prayer a method by which any person can correct the leader. So the leader, he'll be reciting something from the Quran and he'll make an error, make a mistake. Somebody from the congregation, any person, male or female, adult or child, if he mispronounce a word or skip a verse or something, that person can correct them. That's an indication that what we should focus is what is truth and what is proper. So as long as you have that sensitivity is not lost. And you just expressed it to us in a public space, public situation. I'm not saying that you have to confront that leader. You don't have to do that. But keep that sensitivity. And where you see that it's necessary for you to speak up into a situation, even if you're just talking to the individual that has been affected, you've done what you're supposed to do. Sometimes the leaders, they're so sensitive about being disrespected or something that they won't hear you. And they might, depending on their level of maturity, they might try to target you in some way, that you're a troublemaker or something, you know, who knows. Sounds to me like you're better equipped and qualified to be the imam than that person. That's what I think. Think of yourself like that, you know. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have that as a aspiration, but it's persons that have the proper sensitivities in the congregation, in the group, that really strengthen the group. It's not just the leader. The best leaders are a reflection of their best people. And I know from my own experience that our people have been subject to, in the local situations, less than desirable leaders. In our national situations, we've had good leaders. Imam W. Deen Mohammed, his father, we've had good leaders, but locally, it's a gamble. We're not gambling people, you know. You don't know what you're gonna get. And that city you in, I know that city. Some strange things in that city, all right? So the fact that you're here with us, you're guarding yourself for some purpose. Allah has chosen you for some important purpose. So just keep to your determination and keep with the same association that you have, and attend yourself to your wife and your new baby, and the blessings will come to you, and more clarity about how you should move publicly will come to you as well. So don't be concerned. Don't be overly concerned. So we solved this.
Brother Ishmael, can you hear us?
Can't hear him.
No, can't hear you. Hold on one second. I'm still not getting his audio.
He's saying, can he write it?
Yes, if you can write it, type your question and send it to me, and then I'll read it out. We're still having a little bit of issues with the audio on the Zoom. So for those of you that are in Zoom, if you can type your question out and drop it in the chat, or can you send it to or you can send it to Imam Dahan, and he'll read the question. So a couple of them are typing their questions.
All right.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am.
Walaikum
Speak into the
assalam.
mic, please.
I have a question in regards to something you brought up before that I had never heard before in regards to the number 33 in Islamic knowledge. You had mentioned it in regards to Imam Deen Mohammed, 33 years of his leadership, born in 1933. Could you give some understanding in regards to the number 33 in Islamic knowledge?
Yeah. Thank you. That's good. Very good. Thank you. So we're not numerologists, you know. There's a science with regard to numbers, and maybe it's not the people who use it or tend to it with too much of attachment. It kind of gets to an extreme, and it's mysticism, and it's not. It doesn't rank as a body of knowledge that should be respected like we respect other bodies of knowledge. But nevertheless, numbers are meaningful because they order space and time for us, all right? You know, the Quran as it is given now, as we have it now, it has numbers. The verses, they have numbers, but in the time of the Prophet, there was no numbers. The verses weren't numbered like that. We know the separation or distinction of the verses one from another, not by their numbers, but by the way that the Prophet recited the Quran, okay? So he would, if there was a pause or something, they knew that it was a separation there. So that's just to say that when we think of numbers, we shouldn't weigh ourselves down too much with it because it's symbolism. Numbers are figures, okay? Figures. And Mr. Farad, he gave us some help with regard to this. He said, put your mathematical religion or mathematical theology in its proper terms. All right, which suggesting that it wasn't in its proper terms. So in other words, it's something to be interpreted. Numbers are symbols, okay? So there's a report in the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, prayers and the peace be on him, that the age of the person who has earned paradise go from whatever age they were to the age 33. And this is directed, or this is associated with the mission or work of Jesus Christ. And it's also a reference to 6, which is the day in which the human life was created. So it's a discussion on 666 being permissive freedom, which is the shaitan, all right? And 3 and 3, which is 6, which is the true human being in 2 stages of development. 369 being the fulfillment of that development, and then consciousness, right? So 3, 6, 9, then consciousness. 3 and 3 is the fundamental and natural human. And so the reward that is given to human life is suitable for that life. And so God has intended that human life earn for it its reward. And what is its reward? Its reward is Islam. Islam comes out of the human life. Allah says in the Quran that He has named you Muslim both before, in this, meaning the Quran, and before, meaning that Muslim is the identity of human life. It is the human life. And to have the system that governs human life in its proper way is Islam. So the desirable age for all of us at our conclusion, according to Prophet Muhammad's teaching, is 33. And so it makes sense then that the leader for this community, that to me is the representation of the people holding the covenant relationship with God as a model people, would be 33. So 33, born 33, his mission 33 years, just like Christ. Yeah, there's no mistake there. It's a sign. It's for us to read, and appreciate. But everybody can't handle it. And I guarantee you, if you had asked any one of those other imams that same question, they wouldn't have no answer for you. Just some confusion. If you don't have an answer, just say, I don't have an answer. I don't know. Don't speculate. Don't guess. You hurt people if you do that. But it's an ego problem that prevents them from saying, I don't know. Why don't you know? Well, maybe you're not haven't attended to that body of knowledge. That's acceptable. So the answer would be, let me find someone who can help you with that. That's reasonable. Let us find someone. Who can we find? Oh, Imam Abdulmalik, maybe he can help you with that. No, we can't go to him. Right? And that's it. That's them, right? So yeah, that's it's symbolic, but we have to, and we put things in the proper places. We don't come down heavily on that, but it's a support for what we want to do. So in other words, we don't reference that for legitimacy, but we know that it's working in our spirit. And if we follow in the logic and understanding the references, we know we're making the proper connections, we can see how it's intended to support us. And once you understand the science of it, then you can find it wherever you're looking. You say, oh, there it is again. Here it is there. Here it is there. You see the same symbols all over the place, right? You know how I learned this concept? From my children. One of my sons, he he said he was younger. He was maybe, this son now, he's 19. He said, Daddy, he said, there is a triangle. He was looking at the letter A. He didn't know it was the letter A. He couldn't read letters. He was little, you know. He knew shapes though. He had learned shapes. He said, there's a triangle. So I'm looking, what is he talking about, a triangle, you know, because it was the letter A. I don't see, my mind is not showing me a triangle, it's showing me the letter A. But his mind is showing him a triangle, right? So here's a symbolic concept that human beings have, this is an expression of human life. It's an expression of human language, right? Shown in a symbol, okay? So now my son, he's seeing triangles everywhere. He's seeing pyramid, triangle. He's seeing an opening to a gate, triangle. He's seeing the triangles everywhere. Everywhere he's seeing the triangles, you know? So it begins to mean something to him. So he begins to draw triangles and putting triangles together in patterns, you know? So now it's speaking to him. It's a science, it's a logic, and it's supporting his intellectual development. So you can see how peoples will identify with symbols, and they'll put those symbols together to represent who they are. So like the Jews, they have two triangles and pulls on each other, right? And you see some, I've seen these guys that want to communicate. They think they're smart and guided. They're not. They're playing, and people are manipulating them. But they go doing this. They don't know what they're doing. Because I look at them. I say, if you know what you're doing, if you know the science, you're not going to display it like that. You're going to give. If you really devote it to the science of freeing people, then you're going to explain to them what you're doing. You're not just going to give them symbolic gestures. That's a burden on them. That's mystery. You're trying to burden them. You're going around doing this, saying this is enlightenment. This is not all enlightenment. It's just a part of enlightenment. It's the beginning of enlightenment. This symbol is this. It's the human being in his first expression, his nostrils. And God said that he breathed in life into Adam through his nostrils. That's what it's. So the letter A in this triangle, that's where it comes from. But you know what they call them, the Illuminati or something? Yeah, this, you know, what are you doing? Who do you think you're talking to? You think you're talking to a bunch of ignorant people? We're people that were socialized and taught to unravel schemes that are intended to oppress. We have been socialized, chosen to do that, for that work. And the Lamb of God, I'm giving you all some language now from the book of Revelation. The Lamb of God, given the key to the seals, belongs to our tradition. W. Deen Mohammed. That's the Lamb who given the key to open the seals, the 7 locks. Yeah. If you follow him, you'll not be deceived. Not be deceived by any of these imams. And would be ones.
So, Brother Ishmael, he said, thank you for when you spoke on how we shouldn't skip over our experience with Professor Farad and Elijah Muhammad. And he was thinking that was because Allah's Sunnah never changes. So he goes on, he says, a major part of us fulfilling the covenant is recognizing and embracing our journey to where we are and the hand that Allah played in it. And then he asks for your thoughts.
That says it. Thank you. Is he still with us?
Yes.
I don't have to comment on that. That's clear. Thank you very much.
Next question is coming from Sister Lori. She said, Brother Imam, you have often referred to us as an innocent people and spoken of the innocent soul of our people. Last week, you gave one of the meanings of ummi as being innocent. How are we as a people to understand the meaning of our innocence in the best way?
Ummiyi, translated uneducated, unlettered. And this is the protection of innocence. Ummiyi also refers to common knowledge or common sense person. Reasonable, rational. You know the term, maybe those are younger don't know this term, but older persons, my age and older, know this term, mother wit, common sense. This is ummiyi. So the word in Arabic is mother, okay? Ummiyi, coming from mother, all right? Mother is the foundation. So an intelligence that is associated with original education of children from their mothers, that extends itself even into the function of the father, because it is the father that introduces the world outside of the mother's care to the child. But it's not without the trust of the mother. The mother turned the child over to the father. The mother got to check the father out, make sure he's in right shape to take the child into the world. So a child already has a sensitivity that has been fed through that, and the symbol of that is the milk coming from the mother to the child, feeding a sensitivity that is structural, okay? It has the structural agents and ingredients in the milk to structure the child's development, right? And then through her trust that she transferred to her child to have trust in the father, and the father introduced the world. But it's by extension. So from the mother, okay? But I'm not just speaking of the mother as the birth, the circumstances of birth, but also that which feeds the life in its development. So this is the role of innocence. Purity. The Quran refers to milk as a pure liquid. Pure, that it has purity. And one of the rivers is milk. One of the rivers that feeds the garden is milk. So ummiyi is a protective agent of innocence that is necessary to bring you to the ummah. Innocent people that maintain their innocence, don't become guilty in the affairs of the world, are the trusted people. And I'll give you a personal story. When I was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison, the judge in my case said that it's comprehended by the court that I thought of myself as innocent. All right? That means something. In other words, even though I pled guilty, I thought of myself as innocent. And the court recognized that. The court acknowledged it and made an accommodation for it. So in other words, no matter what you say, no matter what your system says, I know that I have maintained innocence in this. And so this is important. There will be assaults on that innocence, is what I'm saying. I know a mother that has concern about her child and all children interacting with the world and its systems, and how those systems cannot be trusted in handling the innocent child. And this can drive a mother out of her mind because of not being able to control or to influence these systems, and watching these systems mold her child even while she's caring for her child. Watch it happening before her eyes and can't do anything to stop it. And the real issue is the assault of these systems on the innocence, because the innocence is a necessary agent to bring the child to establishment. So how do you protect yourself? You protect yourself with the order of peace. The order of peace. You know, military orders, military societies, they have the society of thus and so. They refer to themselves, the society of thus, of this particular discipline, the society of this particular discipline. And all of the weapons, all weapons that have developed, most of them, not all, but most of them, that don't seek to inflict unnecessary harm, come from the spirit of innocence, come from the interest to defend innocence. So for example, the shield, which is a weapon, it's not just a protecting thing, but in warfare, the shield, it has the symbol of the people, right? The shield is the people. It comes out of the people. It comes out of the soul of the innocence of the people to defend their life. And on it, they have their symbol, who they are as a people. And so they use it to defend themselves, but they also use it as an aggressive weapon if necessary. And some shields have like other little components in it that can inflict harm, okay? But the best societies are the societies that are that intend to defend their innocence. And so their first weapon is not an assault weapon, it's a defense, it's a weapon of defense. To defend themselves against the assault of the world. So if we have a weapon as the African-American Muslim community, it wouldn't be the sword. It wouldn't be the sword, not the sword of the Arabs. It would be the shield with the Quran. That is our defense and our weapon. An argument for and against us. For what? For our innocence and against our guilt, if we're guilty. Can't even hold it if you're guilty. Can't touch it. It's above some heads, what I just said, but it's very important. Some Muslim societies, I went to one place and every single person in the street, every single one in this Muslim society was armed. Every one of them. You walk down the street on a daily basis, they're carrying rifles. They're carrying even a symbolic sword, all right? Symbolic. It's a part of their regular dress, daily dress. And I thought to myself, this is a troubled society. We see the picture of the bee in the Quran, and the bee has a weapon, but the Quran doesn't mention his weapon. He has one though, doesn't he? He has a stinger, but the Quran made no mention of him with his weapon, though it's a part of his anatomy. The Quran tells us what about him? That he builds houses, that what is produced from his body is a healing for humanity, right? That's what the Quran tells us about him. But when we study him, we see he has a weapon. So that means that it's not necessary for us to assault or to be in an aggressive posture if we're innocent people. Just produce. And if it becomes necessary to defend yourself, you have what's necessary. It'll come out of you. It will come organically out of you. We never saw Imam W. Deen Mohammed with any weapon. We never saw him in a military uniform. Never. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he forbade his followers from carrying weapons. And when he was asked about armed struggle, this is what he was asked about, because this was in the time in the 60s, 70s, when you had the influence of the Panthers and socialism and armed struggle as a possibility to secure rights for African Americans in this country. And Honorable Elijah Muhammad was asked about armed struggle, and he gave an answer that to this day resonates, and that is what you need arms for. When God provide storms and ice and wind and earthquakes. In other words, everything that is needed to bring you to where you need to be is provided for you. And you have to be wise. Why would a leader who loves his people invite them to destruction? So you're going to invite the African Americans to arm themselves against the greatest, most well-trained and powerful military in the history of mankind on this earth, that will whip up on you with some weapons that you ain't never even, you playing video games imagining a weapon. The weapons that they actually have are more sophisticated than that. And you're going to arm yourself against that and think you're going to survive it? That's foolish. Foolishness. No. What is inherent in the life itself is enough to defend it. And that's innocence. So, Sister Laurie, I hope she got that. Ummiyi, in the life itself, part of the life. Ummiyi, Imam Ummah. So maybe another question or two, and then we'll conclude this.
Any more questions?
None from the.
No.
Okay. You moving slow like I move. When I said a long time, I move. I feel my age. I told the brothers, I got these young children. I think of myself as being young like him. I sit for longer than an hour or two.
Yeah, I know. This is another semi-mathematical question. In the story of Moses,
Closer.
In the story of Moses, the 10 Commandments, why was it revealed on 2 tablets instead of 1?
I have to think about that. My first inclination would be that that there are okay. Well, let me answer. Let me say this first. There's a verse in the Quran that addresses in one verse, all of what the 10 Commandments address in 10 separate commands, okay? The verse is called Kursi, or the verse of the throne. The verse of the throne addresses what the Ten Commandments address as one principle. Okay? So it's one principle. That's one tablet. All right? One principle. One body of law intended to govern society. One principle. All right? That's one tablet. Okay. And Allah says in the Quran that to Shaitan, he says, what is your rationale for not accepting the man that I created with my two hands? So there's the principle of nature and the principle of guidance. All right. So if there is a separation between if there is two tablets, then we would associate that with two core principles. All right. But the Quran gives all of what is associated with Moses in the Bible in one verse. One verse, Kursi, that goes from first establishing that God is is not to be associated with measures, and then conclude with his authority is absolute and singular. And within the space of those two pole expressions is all of what the Ten Commandments discuss. So yeah, my answer would just simply be that if there are two, and I'm not saying there are two, okay, but if there are two, then we can easily see the association between those two and the two hands that God created man. Attention to the nature and to guidance. So if we're going to separate the five into five, one is addressing nature, one guidance. But the Quran doesn't give it that way. It gives it, it's one expression, one verse. And it says in the teaching of Prophet Muhammad that if you conclude your day with the recitation of Kursi, that you will have the condition for your sins to be forgiven. We take these things literally, but it requires some attentiveness from us, some thought. I was on the plane once, another experience with Imam W. Mohammed, and we're going from the United States to Saudi Arabia. And on the plane, they recite, you hear the recording come on, Saudi airline, and the recording comes on, and it's the prayer, dua, that's associated with the Prophet and travel, okay? And so the recording comes on and they recite it in this very dramatic voice. And so the Imam, after it's over with, the Imam looked at me and said, I'm not so sure about that, that the Prophet said that, you know? So it was his way of letting me know that we have to think carefully about what we're listening to. And all the drama, if you listen to it, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, you know, it's very dramatic, very emotional, you know. So, you know, they're trying to reach you beyond the words. When people do that, they're trying to influence you beyond what is said. So maybe you give more attention to the spirituality of it than the actual words. Man, he's not a person that can pass by. You can't pass him. You just can't reach him emotionally. You know, you have to respect his intellect. You have to respect his rational mind. So the same is true when we look at these concerns. You know, we have to, whatever conclusion we come to, if it's going to be satisfactory Islamically, it has to respect our rational mind. We can't just be moved emotionally or spiritually. We have to be balanced. So if well, I'm giving you kind of an introduction into what we're doing this afternoon, but the nature is desirable and respected and suitable in the absence of guidance. If we don't have any guidance, we have guidance in the nature. But once guidance comes, we have to accept guidance. We have to accept guidance. But if guidance is not available, we can rely on nature. But Prophet Muhammad, he ascended on nature. But that wasn't the conclusion. The conclusion was guidance. We must have guidance. Yeah, that's necessary. That's the balance. So if it's two tablets, nature, guidance.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You made mention of on the journey, well, the horizon, the sky and the earth. When Muhammad the Prophet was in the cave and the revelation was coming to him, the story of the revelation, and it impacted him. When he left the cave, it said that he saw the angel Jibril in everywhere that he looked, or in the horizon. Is there a connection with that? And if so, can you elaborate?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I've talked about this recently in Newark. I talked about this. Okay, so there's the material urge, all right? Material urge. Prophet Muhammad is a material person devoted to material progress. He was a merchant, all right? So that's an urge. So that's the earth. That's substance, material, okay? Then the skies, spiritual, all right? And the meeting of the two, all right? So the Prophet said that it's said in the Quran of his vision that it was certain. It was a certain vision that he absolutely saw what he claimed that he saw, okay? And what he saw was a union of his social material urge having a conclusion. He saw the interest that he had in his spirit having satisfaction, having an answer. And he perceived that as being God's will. So the Quran says, as two bow or arrow running parallel to its intended destination. God's will in the spirit of man, okay? That man's purpose, human purpose, that's what he's looking for. That's the conclusion. A rational perception of where my material is supposed to go. What animates it? What gives it its power of inertia? It is God's will that animates the spirit, that gives it its focus, that gives it its potency. Okay? The angel Jibril is called the Holy Spirit. All right. So the understanding of this is the spirit that is purified, that is intended to bring man to his or her purpose. But by what design? Upon what design? And the design is God's will. God's will acting in the life. So as two arrows going to the horizon, going to the destiny. He saw Jibril at the horizon. That's his spirit. But he's drawn to it, to meet it, and to perceive it. To perceive it means to meet it. Okay? To perceive it correctly means to meet it, means to understand its purpose, to perceive it. And so the Quran says, and his perception was completed, that it was precise. That means that the matter is concluded. But the destination is not the physical place. The destination is not Masjid Al-Aqsa. That's just the manifestation of the meeting of the spirit and the will together. But the actual establishment is the processes and the work of the light in our life to bring it into an existing community, functioning, just society. That's Medina. Prophet Muhammad saw where he should go, and he put it into a community reality. The Christians, they have this, okay? They see Jesus Christ as the portal to society, the doorway to get to human society. But Christ himself said that he wasn't the completion of this. He said, I must go. That's what he said. He said, I must go so that the spirit of truth can bring you into all truth. This is what he said. I must depart. So this is an indication that he's reaching for something, that he is not it, although Christian society sees him as the portal to the establishment of every important discipline, everything. They see Christ. If Western society is a manifestation of the perception of Jesus Christ as the portal to human society. That's the whole construct of Western society, is a discussion on Jesus Christ. If you see it, so what is our entrance into it? The doorway. It's a doorway. And it's intended to be a doorway for Muhammad. That's Deen Mohammed's language. Yes. You remember? Yeah. As I'm talking about, as I'm saying it, what they say, channeling? That's him. He's speaking to you. I'm sure that those that knew him the best, if they listen to him, they say, well, we can't deny that Abdulmalik, something about what he has is different. Even my son, I have a son who's grandson of Imam W. Mohammed, one of my sons. And my son, he said to me, Daddy, he said, you and Papa different from these others. That's what he told me. He told me that recently. He said, I listened to you when you were in Newark. And he said, you're different from these others. I said, well, your grandpa, I said, he taught me. He said, he just acknowledged it, nodded. That's help to me, though. I know what's in my son's spirit. I know how he was raised. His mother raised him a certain way. So for him to say that, I didn't make any issue of it to him, but it meant something to me. Yeah. I'll leave it there because I want to. This is part of what I want to talk about this afternoon. So I'll leave it there. So yeah, it's 9:45. So this is the last question until this afternoon.
I've been trying to wrap my head around the concept of the educational philosophy. And I teach middle school. I teach ancient history, and a lot of times my thoughts are centered around that. But when you talk about the educational philosophy that encompasses, I imagine that you're referring to one that will encompass from, let's say, kindergarten up through high school in all subjects. I'm trying to wrap my head around what the educational philosophy would look like. Would you be able to elaborate on that some? I know you spoke on it some, but I guess I'm trying to have it crystallized more in my head.
I'm not so sure that your head is the right place to begin. It's first, I think, in your heart. That's the first place it should start. Then graduate to your brain. So the sense of it is that we are owing our existence to the same entity that has designed for us a purpose. And everything that we encounter in this existence is a sign to bring us to our purpose. Now, if you have that at the foundation and you embrace that in your heart, then your brain will begin to mate with it. And you'll see the answers for whatever discipline you have, whatever discipline you have as an interest. Your brain focuses that discipline, all right, or pursues that discipline, but it is your heart that focuses you. The brain is a complement to the heart. The heart has the proper way of looking at it in terms of sensitivities, all right, but it's the brain that looks at the details and puts together the necessary components. But at the core of it is first an awareness and a respect for the fact that we exist according to the plan of our Creator. If we can embrace that, then our spirit will take us to the disciplines in the natural environment that will structure for us a system of education. I read once that Native Americans, that they got the bow and the arrow from the heavens. I had to think about that a long time to understand what was meant by that. And said that they looked at the sky and the moon and they saw the bow. They saw the bow and the moon. This is powerful in their spirituality. So the bow is a sacred object that they believe was given to them by their Creator. And they saw it in the moon. You can see that, right? You can see the half moon. That's a bow. So the ancient mind working with God's creation finds expression for what's in the soul, and then creates a whole discipline and the character of a whole community. Who are the Native Americans without the bow and arrow? Who are they? It defines them. They interact with their environment with that symbol. And we have that same symbol in Islam. With Prophet Muhammad, the two arrows. So take your mind out of it. Let your heart pursue and take you some places. And then say, come on, intellect, come on now, it's time for you to engage here. We're in the right setting now. We're in the right setting. So now engage. Okay. So let's conclude with that, and we will reconvene, come back together at Asa.
Okay, for everyone in the Zoom, like I said earlier, you'll get a link again shortly before we start. Go ahead and just tap the link, and that'll log you right in for the third and final session.
Yes, yeah, okay. So, Brother Elijah, you want me to just sign my name in it?
Yeah, say to Newark, to show.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So you tell me each one.
No letter.
All right. 'Cause I didn't know. So
One of these go to Newark.
Newark,